Okay, Craig here. We're going to do another video about the Mack. If this is the first video you've seen about this truck, I've only had one other video. It'll be in the description box. This is a 1955 Mack gasoline. The military designation is an M51 6x6, meaning all 10 wheels drive, and it's a 5-ton dump truck. All right, and it's been sitting here for 20 years roughly, so it hasn't, and I haven't did nothing to the truck in 20 years. So, can I get it back to work? Got to build this warehouse. Still waiting for another mechanic on another machine. I'm going to tackle this thing myself because I'm not really getting the help that I need. So what we have to do is see if this engine's any good. Because if the engine's no good, why bother saving it? So, but it does turn, but doesn't mean the engine's any good. So I got thinking about it afterwards, and okay, the engine finally moves by hand. We got to get to move with the electric for one, and I'll get into that in a second. But we also have to do a compression test, I think, because if we have too low a compression, or if the compression's way off on some cylinders, that's a really bad sign that there's something wrong internally with the engine. And I don't have a scope to look in the cylinder. So before I do any of that, let's check compression. So how do I check compression? First of all, I have to get the engine turning over electrically. That's a must. So it wouldn't engage. So I pulled the starter out, hooked the starter up manually with jumper cables straight to the battery, and the starter does turn. Hey, it was rebuilt in 1970. Of course it does. So the starter was good, and it's got a manual throw lever to engage the Bendix into the small pinion gear into the, I think it's called the flywheel, right? So that was functional, and that kicks in the electric. Once that bottoms out, it makes contact and kicks in the electric. But there's also a solenoid. So the solenoid is bad. I'm pretty sure I came to that conclusion. Haven't changed it yet. But anyway, I hooked it up manually. I got some help out here. I had two people helping me briefly to do a compression test on this machine, because that's something I'm going to need to do before I invest a lot more money into this and find out that I'm stuck because now I got to replace a $5,000 engine or whatever it would cost. Don't know. So anyway, so I did a compression test. Put the starter back in, hooked it up manually with the cables. Well, here, roll the B-roll. Got it to the floor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, here we go.
All righty. Ready. That one went up to 68.
68. So as you heard, the guy cranking manually with help, the guy pushing the pedal is engaging the Bendix into the flywheel, and then I hooked jumper cables up to it, and I had somebody reading the reading on the compression tester gauge that I bought. And that particular one was 68. Here's the numbers. All 6 cylinders: 70, 68, 18, 40, 69, and 20. Obviously, even for somebody like me, a non-mechanic, I know that's not good. I didn't know if the 70 number, because 3 of them are actually around 70, which I'm thinking it might be good. Remember, this thing is meant to run off of gas, 72 octane gasoline. So we probably can have very low compression and still run. I don't know. It's meant to be abused and abused. But obviously, with 3 of the cylinders under 40, and the others are at 70, that's not good. So okay, so what could the problem be? And by the way, looking through all the technical manuals, the military technical manuals, I find that it's supposed to be, and for a lot of different models, it's supposed to be between 110 to 130, I believe it was. So even 70 is not good. So something's up with the engine, obviously. I don't have a scope to look in it. So what I have to do, in my mind, again, the non-mechanic speaking here, it's only semi-mechanic, I have to find out what's bad with it. In my mind and my basic knowledge, it could be one of 3 things for low compression on each cylinder. Head gasket, so it's leaking into either the oil or the water or to another cylinder or just out into the atmosphere. And a head gasket would be, I could probably do that myself. It's got 2 heads, 3 per cylinder, 3 per head, 3 cylinders per head. And so it's light enough I could lift it up. And head gaskets, I called my parts people after getting all these contacts from the Finlay show, and gasket sets are available, rebuild kits, complete rebuild kits are available. Apparently, and oversized pistons and everything, I could get all that stuff, apparently. So, head gasket number one. Number two could be valves. That would be the next least expensive option. Still taking the heads off and taking them into a shop, although I could do it myself because I have done that before to a car I had many, many decades ago. If the valves are not seating properly, that's going to be bad compression and need a valve job, unless there's just something stuck in there that's keeping them from seating. Need a valve job. A shop would probably charge me a couple grand to do that, and then I still have to put head gaskets in and still anyway. So that's the next least expensive option. The last option, which is the worst of all the options, is cylinders, the cylinder piston rings. Worn cylinders or scored or rusty cylinders to where they're not seating, or the rings aren't, or bad rings or bad pistons or scored cylinders, something wrong with it. And that would mean the engine's got to come out and taken to a shop. And I can't do that myself to bore the piston, the rings, to bore the cylinders out. And I don't have the stuff to do that, and I've never done that before, so I'd have to have somebody else do it. And what are we talking? $4,000, $5,000 to have that engine rebuilt? Check all the bearings and everything else. Would it be worth it? Okay, so I don't know which of those three options it is, whether it's the head gaskets, valves, or rings slash cylinders, pistons, whatever. So what do I do? If it needs a new engine, we're talking $5,000 plus labor. That's just a guess. I'm based on what I've seen it cost for my other machine. It cost me $6,000 just to rebuild the engine block of my crawler loader, and which is still not hooked up yet, which I'm still trying to get a mechanic out here to do it. Is it worth it? Not sure. It's an old machine. Okay, so when I went to the Findlay show, which I have a video up here on my channel too, when I went to the Findlay show, got a lot of names and contacts, and started calling around, and yes, I found out I could still get some parts. Don't know if I could get everything, but I could get some parts, so that isn't going to be a huge hurdle. Some things it might be, but other things it might not be. Things for the engine didn't seem to be. The main company I called, they said, yeah, we pretty much have everything that you need inside that engine, including pistons and bearings, and okay, so they have all that. So I could rebuild it, but is it worth it? Well, in my calling around to all my contacts, called one gentleman who was a vendor at the show also. I'd seen him in other years. In fact, I bought things from him in previous years when I was a vendor at the show, the Findlay show. And he happened to call me back and say, yeah, I got one of those engines. It's in the barn. It's been there for 30 years. In the original crate, packed by the military. Holy moly, what a find. I jumped on it because that's going to be the least, almost the least, unless it's just the head gaskets, that's probably going to be my least expensive option to get this thing back to work. I got to jump in this F800 and get it out to where the engine is so I can, because I'm going to need a crane to lift the lid up. It's that heavy. I mean, it looks like it's that. I can't do it alone. So stay tuned. Stay here with it here. I'm going to do a compression test on this engine that's been in the crate for about 33 years. Well, there it is. As the previous owner told me when he opened it up, he said it was a real work of art. Fresh coat of paint, and there's more on it. We're going to take a complete inventory of what's here, but I'm happy with what I see so far. And from what I'm gathering here with all the paperwork I've looked at so far, this is actually, I can get the window stuck cooperate here, 1978 at the Red River Army Depot, which, and it even has, my compression test is done for me here, and look like they're all very close to 120. So we're gonna check that. At least when it was packed in 1978, when it was rebuilt. So what do we got here? Well, of course, this is the front of the engine, complete with fan and fan belts, which are loose. So I won't be able to turn the engine over like this. In order to turn this engine over by hand first, I want to make sure everything's freed up before I put that starter on it. I'm going to have to tighten these belts up. In order to do that, basically just the generator, very similar to an alternator in a car. Just 2 bolts to loosen. This is the pivot, so just all it needs to do is free up. Boy, clean engine. When was the last time you worked on an engine and didn't have to have it and get or use degreaser? Okay. Amazing. 1978. And this rubber still looks good. Okay, let's see what we got here. And here we go. We are freely rotating the engine by hand. Hearing the air compressor make noise, groaning. So next is a compression test. But in order to do a compression test, I need batteries again. I just put these batteries in this morning. I got to take them out now to do my compression test. I don't have another good set of batteries around. And then I got to, after I'm done that, I got to put them back in so I can use my crane again. So this is getting old. Going from 12 volt to 24 volt over there. So that's 24 volts, and negative going to ground. Try to find a place that doesn't have any paint on it, and this hopefully will be a good ground. Grounds the whole engine and box, and then positive directly onto the starter. So when I connect this positive up, the starter should move. The engine won't turn over because I don't have the Bendix extended. So let's give that a shot. Be a spark. Starter is good. So now I need to engage that Bendix and see if the engine will turn over good. Okay, I'm holding it down with my hand, the Bendix, and let's see if this engine is going to turn over. Everything out of the way. Contact. Yes, indeed, the engine turns over. Okay, now to do a compression test. Okay, start with the number 1 cylinder. At least I think it's number 1. It's the one in front. I have to check the manual to see if they actually call this number 1. My cheap Harbor Freight, paid $30 basically with tax. Pittsburgh. Of course, it's probably made in China. Notice how they try to fool you. No one's fooled. Okay, let's go crank it. Looks like I'm reading about 105. By the way, there's oil in this. It's just to the bottom of the dipstick, and it's very clean oil, obviously. And it's apparently they've got oil, but it's low. It's like in your car. It's about the point where you'd be a quart low below the bottom line on your dipstick on your car. So I'm confident enough that it probably has enough oil that I'm not going to damage anything, and I'm not cranking it much anyway. I'm certainly not running it. Okay, let's get this gauge to where you can see it, and go crank it again. About the exact same thing. 105. Let's crank the third one. to 105, same thing. Being this is a cheap compression test kit, I'm just assuming that probably it's off a little bit, because why would the compression change after only 45 years? Number 4. Almost 110, somewhere between 105 and 110. They're all coming out consistent. That's really good. Try number 5. Last one. How do you like that? Right between. We're probably looking at 105 again. So, I am happy with these results. Firstly, it's consistent. They're all reading probably within about 5 of each other. Now, looking at the paperwork from 1978, we see 119, 118, 122, 120, 122, 120. So they're all within 5, actually within 4, which is about what I'm at, I tested at. And I'm thinking that I'm probably off by about 10 or 15. That's my gauge. That's my best guess. I'd have to get another gauge to confirm that, another compression test kit. I'm not going to do that, but I might, maybe a mechanic I have coming over, maybe he'll have one. He can double check one of my numbers to see how far off I am. So now that the compression test is done, unhook all the batteries, put them back in the crane, put the lid back on it, just setting on here so I don't have to worry about getting animals in it and rain on it. Okay, let's get this video wrapped up because there's a lot more to do, so there could be a whole lot more videos to come. I've got the engine here near the truck. It took me a half a day, almost a whole day to get it here. See, the problem is I don't have an access road that the trailer couldn't navigate it without bottoming out. It's very hilly terrain, very rugged, a lot of vegetation, and so I had to use an unconventional means to get it from the road all the way up to here, up a large hill as well, using my crane in a way that this type of crane should never be used, so don't do this at home. It was a big chore, but I got it here safely, ready to start pulling this thing. So what's my next steps? Any mechanics out there can help me out maybe? I need probably, well, drain the radiator. I'll probably have to remove the radiator and maybe the front end and the front bumper to be able to get the engine in easier. I'm not sure about that yet. We're going to investigate that. Got to get everything disconnected. A little bit of fuel in the lines. I'm not worried about the tank yet, the gas and the fuel in the tank. I'm going to leave the oil in the engine, and I'm going to put the engine right back in the container when I'm done. That'll be my spares house, if you will. I'm a little worried about what I see so far. Looking under this engine a little closer, I'm seeing some things that are different than that other engine, so there may be some difficulties ahead. We'll see, but it's going to be a saga that I'm going to continue on. We're going to put it make a playlist, and we're going to continue the series maybe for people who want to follow this until we get this thing actually moving on its own power. We're going to put new additional videos in this playlist, so if you want to back up or go forward, check out this playlist to find out more. Thanks for watching.